Hey everyone. Ever get that feeling like people use the terms education and intelligence like they're the same thing?
Yeah, it's really common, isn't it? But they're actually pretty different.
Okay, so before we get too far into this, let's make sure we're all on the same page. How about we start with some definitions?
Sound good?
So how does our source material define education?
Well, it describes it as that structured process of, learning and acquiring skills. It's all about those active learning experiences, whether you're sitting in a classroom or, taking an online course, even just exploring and learning on your own. It's about making that effort to grow your knowledge base.
Right, so it's about building that foundation, kind of like building your toolbox.
Exactly.
And then intelligence is how you use those tools.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. The source defines intelligence as like your inherent capacity for learning, reasoning, problem solving, and how you adapt to new situations.
Okay, so you're saying someone could have a ton of education, like a wall full of degrees, but they could still struggle with basic problem solving, like in everyday life.
Absolutely. The source even gives an example.
Hmm.
Think about like a brilliant astrophysicist who can explain, complex theories about the universe, but then they can't figure out how to put together a piece of furniture.
Oh, I've totally met people like that.
Right. So
Yeah.
they might have a ton of education in one area, but maybe lack that practical intelligence that helps you just navigate everyday challenges.
And then you've got the flip side, someone who might not have finished high school, but they can build a house or fix any engine.
Exactly.
So clearly intelligence comes in different forms. It's not just about those pieces of paper you get from school.
Right. And that's why it's so important to understand the difference between education and intelligence. You can have one without the other.
So this whole nature versus nurture debate around intelligence,
Yeah.
what does our source have to say about that? Is it all in your genes?
Well, the source says it's not as simple either. It's more about how these two things interact.
Hmm.
Think of it like genetics provide the raw potential, right?
Yeah, the raw potential.
And then your upbringing, your culture, your experiences, they're like the architects shaping how that potential is realized.
So it's like you're born with a certain set of genes, but how those genes express themselves depends on the environment you grew up in.
Exactly. The source brings up a fascinating example of identical twins,
Oh, yeah.
separated at birth and raised in completely different environments.
Hmm.
And even though they have the same genes, they ended up with different levels of intelligence, and their lives turned out really differently.
Wow, that's wild. It really shows how much environment matters. So if intelligence is shaped by external factors, does that mean we can actually become more intelligent over time? Like, do we have any control over it?
Well, that's where the idea of neuroplasticity comes in. Our brains are amazingly adaptable.
Neuroplasticity.
Yeah. So even though we start with a certain genetic blueprint, our experiences, what we learn, the effort we put in, all of that can actually change the structure and function of our brains.
Okay, so you're saying it's not set in stone. We can actually become more intelligent through our experiences and learning. That's pretty cool.
It is.
Yeah.
But that's also where the source warns us about the dangers of overestimating intelligence, especially when it's tied to formal education.
Oh, yeah. The whole, I have a degree, so I'm smarter than you trap.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's never a good look. But what's the real harm in that kind of thinking?
Well, for starters, it can lead to arrogance, right?
Right.
And a tendency to dismiss other people's ideas, like you're shutting down valuable perspectives because they don't fit with your supposedly superior knowledge.
So even if you are super intelligent, being a jerk about it isn't going to win you any points.
Definitely not. It can also, really hinder your own growth and learning. When you think you already have all the answers, you close yourself off to new information, new experiences. You just become stagnant.
Okay, I see what you mean. Too much ego can actually make you less intelligent in the long run.
Right.
But, I mean, isn't all this reading and learning supposed to make you smarter?
Well, reading and learning are definitely great for expanding your knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But knowledge alone doesn't automatically equal intelligence. Think of it this way. You could read every single book on leadership, right?
Yeah.
But if you can't actually communicate, if you can't motivate and inspire a team in the real world, all that knowledge isn't going to do you much good.
It's like having all the ingredients for a fancy meal, but not actually knowing how to cook. You need that skill, that intelligence to turn it into something, meaningful.
Exactly.
So how does all of this actually play out in our lives? It's got to be more than just getting good grades or having a fancy job title, right?
You're absolutely right. And that's a perfect segue into our next point. The source goes into some really interesting examples of how intelligence shows up in, different ways beyond just your typical book smarts.
Okay, I'm hooked. I definitely want to hear more about that.
So, we were talking about how intelligence shows up in different ways.
Yeah, like beyond just acing those standardized tests.
Exactly.
So give us some examples. How does intelligence actually play out in real-world situations?
Okay, so the source talks about problem solving.
Hmm.
And, it's not just about finding any solution. It's about analyzing a situation,
Hmm.
like really digging deep to understand what's going on, finding the root cause of a problem, and then coming up with a solution that's practical, something that actually works.
So it's not just about like fixing a leaky faucet.
Right.
It's about understanding like the whole plumbing system so you can prevent leaks from happening in the future.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
about thinking about all those variables, the consequences, that kind of thing. So it's a pretty holistic approach.
Okay, I like that. What else is there?
Well, there's creativity, of course.
Creativity. So we're talking about like artistic talent.
Yeah, that's part of it. But it's much bigger than that.
Oh.
It's also about that ability to think outside the box, coming up with innovative ideas and solutions, whether it's like, a new marketing strategy or designing a product or even just finding a really clever way to organize your closet.
So even something like cleaning can be a sign of intelligence.
Totally, if you're, finding new and efficient ways to do it.
I like that. So problem solving, creativity. What else?
Well, there's adaptability, and that's a huge one, especially these days. Think about how fast everything's changing.
Yeah, technology, the job market, it's crazy.
Right. So being able to learn new skills, being open to new information, being able to adjust to all this constant change, that's crucial for navigating modern life.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change.
Exactly.
So someone who's really good at adapting, they're like quick to pick up a new software program.
Right.
Or they can, start a new job and just roll with it. They don't freak out about the changes.
They embrace the unknown. They don't see change as a threat.
I love that. Okay, so we've got problem solving, creativity, adaptability. I feel like we're missing something, though. What about, like, people skills? Isn't that a form of intelligence, too?
Oh, absolutely. That's emotional intelligence. And that's a big one.
Yeah, I feel like emotional intelligence is one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot these days. What does it actually mean?
Well, the source defines it as, like, the ability to understand and manage your own emotions.
Right.
But it's also about being really attuned to how other people are feeling.
Okay, so it's about empathy.
Yeah, empathy, compassion, self-awareness. It's about having those skills that allow you to build strong and healthy relationships.
So someone who can walk into a room and, like, diffuse a tense situation.
All right.
By reading the room and understanding what's going on emotionally, they'd be showing high emotional intelligence.
Exactly. They're able to respond with, empathy and understanding. And then there's practical intelligence.
Okay, practical intelligence. Is that like street smarts?
Yeah, exactly. It's about, being resourceful, being able to apply what you know to real life situations. It's about getting things done, even if you don't have all the, all the resources.
So like that person who can always figure out a shortcut or who's like amazing at DIY projects.
Exactly. They might not have a fancy degree, but they're the ones you call when you need something fixed.
They just figure it out.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so we've got problem solving, creativity, adaptability, emotional intelligence, practical intelligence. That's a lot.
It is. It's like this whole team of intelligences all working together.
I love that.
And the takeaway here is intelligence is not one size fits all. We all have our own unique blend of these different types, some strengths, some weaknesses, and recognizing that can be really empowering.
Makes you think differently about those standardized tests that try to, boil everything down to a single score.
Right. Like it's so much more complex than that.
It is. So if we all have different strengths, does that mean like we can actually work on developing our intelligence in areas where maybe we're not as strong?
That's where things get really interesting because, intelligence isn't fixed. It's something that we can actually develop and enhance, throughout our lives.
Wait, really? So you're telling me I'm not stuck with like whatever level of intelligence I have now? I can actually become more intelligent over time.
Absolutely. And that's a really important point from the source.
Okay, this is where I get excited. But how do we actually do that? What are some practical steps we can take to, boost our intelligence?
Well, the source really emphasizes the importance of lifelong learning. And that's a great place to start.
Lifelong learning. So it's not just about like formal education, right?
Right. It's about staying curious, seeking out new experiences, constantly challenging yourself to learn and grow.
So it could be anything from like reading books to listening to podcasts to taking a workshop to just, having conversations with people who have different perspectives.
Exactly. Anything that sparks your curiosity and expands your understanding.
This makes me think about those people who, like, they seem to know a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
They're always up on current events. They can talk about, like, all sorts of different topics, and they're just, like, eager to learn.
They've got that thirst for knowledge.
They do. It's like they've cracked the code to lifelong learning.
Right. They get it. They understand that learning is a journey, not a destination.
I love that. So how does all this tie back to the distinction between education and intelligence? It feels like they're, connected in some way.
They are. I mean, think of it this way. Education gives you that foundation, the building blocks.
Okay.
But it's intelligence that lets you actually build something meaningful on top of that foundation.
So it's like education gives you the ingredients, but intelligence is the recipe that brings it all together.
That's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
And, just like a recipe, intelligence can be, refined and improved over time.
You just got to keep practicing, keep experimenting.
Exactly.
So we've talked about education, intelligence, lifelong learning. There's another term that often comes up in these conversations, and I feel like it's even more mysterious. What about wisdom?
Wisdom.
Yeah, that one's tricky. What does the source have to say about that?
Well, it doesn't go into a ton of detail, but it definitely hints at a strong connection between intelligence and this deeper level of understanding that we call wisdom.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dive into that in part 3.
All right, so we're back, and we're ready to tackle this big idea of wisdom.
It's a fascinating one, isn't it?
It is. So where do we even begin? Is wisdom like just another type of intelligence, or is it something, something more than that?
It's definitely more than just, having a lot of knowledge or being really good at problem solving.
Okay, so what makes it different?
Wisdom is about, like, taking all that knowledge and intelligence and using it with good judgment.
Good judgment. Yeah, and ethical considerations. It's about seeing the bigger picture, understanding how things are connected. And it's about making choices that are good not just for yourself, but for other people, for the world around you.
So you could be, like, a genius, right?
Right.
Super intelligent, but still lack wisdom.
Absolutely. Think about, I don't know, maybe like a brilliant strategist, right? Someone who can come up with these amazing plans.
Okay, yeah.
But they might not consider, how those plans will actually affect people on an emotional level or what the unintended consequences might be.
So they might be smart, but they're not necessarily wise.
Exactly. They might not be thinking about the long-term impact of their decisions.
This makes me think about all those, like, corporate scandals and stuff, where people made decisions that maybe seemed good in the short term, but ended up having all these, terrible consequences down the road.
Right. And that's often a lack of wisdom.
So if wisdom is more than just, like, book smarts, how do we actually develop it?
That's a great question.
Mm.
And it's not something you can just, learn from a textbook.
Right.
Wisdom comes from experience,
Yes.
from reflecting on those experiences, and from being willing to learn, not just from our successes, but from our mistakes, too. Those are often the best teachers.
Yeah, sometimes you learn more from messing things up than you do from getting it right.
Absolutely. It's about, those aha moments, those times when you realize, oh, okay, that's how it works. And those moments can come from, the good times and the bad times.
Yeah, it's all part of the journey, right?
It is. It's about embracing those challenges,
Yeah.
Seeking out different perspectives and being humble enough to admit when you don't have all the answers.
That humility thing is, that's a big one.
It is.
Yeah.
Because, none of us have it all figured out. And the more willing we are to learn from others, the wiser we become.
This makes me think about, like, mentors,
Yeah.
people who have already walked the path you're on. And they've learned a lot along the way. They've gained some wisdom.
Yeah, seeking out those mentors or, elders, people who have faced similar challenges, that can be incredibly valuable. It's like having a guide to help you navigate those tricky parts of the journey.
It's like having a map and a compass.
Right. So you don't get lost. And, wisdom isn't just about personal growth either.
Oh.
It's also about, using what you've learned, all that knowledge and experience, to contribute to something bigger than yourself, to make a positive impact on the world.
It's like if you've been lucky enough to gain some wisdom, you kind of have a responsibility to, to share it and use it to help others.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
Wisdom is about recognizing that we're all connected and that our choices, our actions, they have an impact on everyone and everything around us.
Wow, I love that. So as we wrap up here, I'm just thinking about everything we've covered today. We started with definitions, and then we talked about, real world examples. And now we've ended up here talking about this really profound concept of wisdom.
It's been quite a journey, and I think what it all comes down to is this. Education, intelligence, and wisdom, they're all interconnected. They each play a vital role in making us who we are and helping us navigate this crazy thing called life.
So education gives us the tools,
Mhm.
intelligence helps us use those tools, and then wisdom. Wisdom is like that guiding force that helps us make sure we're using those tools for good.
That's a beautiful way to sum it up. And it's a
Wow.
process. It's a lifelong journey of learning and growing.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining us for this deep dive into education versus intelligence. It's been a really thought-provoking conversation.
It really has. It's been a pleasure.
And to all of you listening out there, we hope this has inspired you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep seeking wisdom in all its forms. Until next time, keep those minds sharp and those hearts open.
This is DigitView.